Eu faço coro.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are about to start our final panel of the day. We are going to discuss basically green hydrogen, and the title of our panel is The Role of Green Hydrogen in the Energy Transition. I'm going to ask initially for our speakers to introduce themselves, and then we're going to have a debate with a couple of questions that I prepared to address to the speakers. So with no further ado, I will ask Nuno to introduce himself, talk about his company in 2 minutes each one, so you can start. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, being actively participating at COP28. So I am Nuno Silva. I head the technology area. I'm the CTO of FSEC in Portugal. We are a Portuguese-based company acting on the three main areas: energy, mobility, and environment. We have a long track record history on the energy infrastructure, so we provide smart infrastructures for transmission, distribution, and also generation. On the mobility side, we do provide light metro railway solutions and also electric mobility solutions. And on the environment, we do manage water and wastewater systems. We manage a little bit of industry dedusting, and last but not the least, we have a nice ambition and already some track record on the biogas industry, with two main power plants already in the north of Europe, in Norway and Denmark. And obviously, from biogas, we want to go renewable gases, and therefore, the hydrogen, and especially its derivatives, play a role in the transformation that we want to operate in our company. With that said,
thank you, Nuno. We can hand over to...
Likewise. Thank you very much for having us here. It's a great pleasure to be at the Portuguese Pavilion. My name is Pedro Guedes Campos, and I'm the Director of Business Development for Hydrogen and Sustainable Aviation Fuels at Smart Energy. Smart Energy is an investment firm, Swiss-based, since 2011, but with most of its assets being developed in Portugal, three quarters of its assets, both on the renewable side, but also on the hydrogen. And that's the angle that I want to bring in today.
Thank you, Pedro. Ana, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here at the first Portugal Pavilion at COP. My name is Ana Silveira. I'm the Director of External and Regulation and Communications at GALP. For those who are not familiar with GALP, GALP is an integrated energy company that operates in 10 different countries, in 3 different continents, and with a global footprint, with a diversified portfolio from upstream to downstream to midstream. We also have renewables and new business such as battery value chain or hydrogen. According to our decarbonization strategy, renewable hydrogen will play a significant role. It will be particularly important to reduce carbon emissions in challenging sectors like the hard-to-abate sector, maritime, aviation, and energy-intensive industries. We are the largest producer and also the largest consumer of hydrogen in Portugal, primarily because we have a Sines refinery. But it's mainly, for now, grey hydrogen made from natural gas. And to make our activities more sustainable, GALP wants to produce green hydrogen and e-fuels. We are already taking some steps towards the decarbonization process. We have taken the final decision to invest in a 100 megawatt electrolyzer project in Sines and for an advanced biofuels unit in partnership with Mitsui. We also have other ongoing projects in the hydrogen field, namely the consortium Green H2 Atlantic with other European countries, and that's it.
Thank you, Anna. Jeronim, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you, APREN, for organizing this panel. My name is Jeronim. I'm the Director General of DGG of Portugal. DGG is the authority which is responsible to monitor and to implement energy policy in Portugal, and also to do all the licensing of energy and mineral resource projects in Portugal.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, we can hand over the mic. Because you have different backgrounds and currently you have different perspectives and you work on different types of companies, or in the case of Jeronim, representative of the Portuguese state, I have a couple of questions that I'm going to address. It's the same question to the four of you, and then I would like to take your point of view. I can start with Jeronim here, and then I will ask, it's just to get the microphone going backwards and forwards. So, the first question I would like to address the four of you is the following. The European Commission published in July the 2 delegated acts with the details regarding green hydrogen and the other RFNBO's production. Since then, there has been some counter-arguments from other member states regarding the temporal and geographic correlation and also the additionality principle. Do you consider that those criteria can interfere with the defined 2030 targets for the development of green hydrogen, especially on the production side?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Now,
Portugal, when this discussion of the additionality and started, Portugal was one or maybe the first country to step up and say it was against this kind of rules, because this is a rule that doesn't make any sense when regarding the Portuguese reality on renewables. So that's why we were against in the first day, and during the discussion, Portugal always maintained its position against this kind of rules, because in the end they just blocked the intentions of promoters to develop their projects. And that's why when rules make no sense, especially, they should abandon it, at least to have some kind of escape route for countries like Portugal that has more than 60% renewables today and will have more than 80% renewables in the next couple of years. So no, it doesn't make any sense.
thank you. Anna?
My quick answer is also yes to the question. There is no doubt that this long-awaited delegated act will have some impact in the development of hydrogen projects in Europe. This topic was debated for a long time, but I'm not sure that everyone understood the extension of the consequences of the criteria that was taken, of the decision that was taken. Both additionality and temporal and geographical correlation make a lot of sense in theory, but when there is always a but. In reality, when we are looking into the hourly correlation, that may increase the cost of hydrogen, that may slow down the project implementation, and it can lower the production, mainly the percentage of RFNBOs that are produced. If you really want to substitute gas for our steam reformer for green hydrogen, we need to ensure there is no intermittency. So our refinery cannot rely on sunny days or on windy days, with no flexibility on temporarily synchronism. Even if we have a lot of PPAs, there will be hours with no wind or with no sun, so which will not allow us to produce green hydrogen considered as RFNBO. So the ideal scenario would be to have a faster deployment of storage, or Portugal achieving the threshold of 90% of renewables penetration to be exempted from the additionality.
Thank you, Anna. Pedro?
Maybe a different angle from a smart energy perspective. We actually have seen our strategy, let's say, confirmed by the Delegated Act, because we do come along with our own renewables from the onset. So at least 35% load factor based on our own PV, and then we hybridize with wind to go into 55% of load factor for the electrolyzers. And that's actually one of the big arguments in favor of our projects in active development, 1.5 gigawatt in Portugal. So that's really, that was the reason why we chose Portugal, actually, to develop our renewables and come along. So additionality doesn't scare us, quite the opposite. It puts us in a very good position. Now, look at it from a dynamic perspective. There are time windows for this to kick in. Additionality, actually, if you are a front runner and if you start producing hydrogen before the end of 2027, you're actually exempt from additionality for up to 2037, so 10 years more, which by then, for sure, and the ambition is that Portugal reaches the 90% renewables on the grid, on the power grid by 2031 or so. That's apparently what Aurora Research tells us. And with that in mind, we're not really scared about the fact that indeed these constraints a little bit, but us as early movers and developers and developing projects in Portugal, we feel quite comfortable with it. Now, there's also the hourly correlation that kicks in 2030 only. So until then, and from 2027 onwards, well, up to 2030, you will still have monthly correlations, so it's possible to have PPAs, renewable PPAs to keep on having a higher load factor and therefore depreciate better the asset. So that's really a key element. And with that in mind, again, the dynamics tells us that, well, okay, we should be, well, the regulation is supposed to be revised by 2028. So there is some feedback that we should provide to the Commission so that the policymakers can change it accordingly. And indeed, hourly correlation is quite challenging, but expectation is that the market will go into that direction as well. So we're not as skeptical as other players in the market, I would say.
Thank you, Pedro. Nuno?
Well, by 2028, it will be too late, definitely. So, yes, it brings us a huge challenge. I do agree with the common sense opinion here of Ana and Geronimo. It's an emerging sector. So the more you regulate, the more time you take to materialize projects. I live on implementing our knowledge and our technologies into the hydrogen factories that are around the world. But we would definitely like to start in Portugal and support the Portuguese matrix and context, because that's favorable. And these acts do not bring any momentum in the Portuguese sector. It actually delays FIDs, and if that is the case, then we got ourselves a problem. There is one positive. One of the delegate acts actually is positive because it actually allows us a completely holistic way to calculate the emissions, the CO2 emissions related to the production of hydrogen. And that is applied also for those who import hydrogen. In that sense, establishing rules is good for investors. But then again, if we are to revise on the 1st of January 2028 when it comes in force, then it's probably too late to achieve our targets by 2030.
Well, thank you. Because I'm going to allow myself to comment, because all the questions that I prepared for you, I also have an answer. So I think the Delegated Act actually makes sense. One, for the temporal correlation, the geographical correlation, for Portugal, that's an advantage. Because if we incorporate 85 to 90% of renewables by 2030, we're going to have a competitive advantage that no other country is going to have. And the additionality principle is just not to cannibalize direct electrification, because if you move all of that generation into green hydrogen, you cannot supply the electrical system. And so it makes sense for Portugal to do that, but it's just my opinion. I'm moderating here. So let's go again. Second question. So the second question that I will start with, Ana, is What do you think needs to be done to ensure that green hydrogen is produced in Europe and that the REPowerEU production targets in the European Union are achievable, mainly renewable capacity, storage, off-takers, project level funding, de-risking, etc. So, Anna, I will start with
A
you.
lot of questions for me. I would say, first of all, for the technology to succeed, it needs to be competitive. That's the first thing. And we all know at this point that gray hydrogen is still more cheaper than green hydrogen. But we already have a lot of things. What we have targets, we have mandates, we already have more clarity on regulation. We have ambition from national and European governments. We also have commitment from energy companies to decarbonize, but that's not enough. Making hydrogen a reality will require support mechanisms. And if we look into the US strategy like IRA, they went into a different route and they are putting a lot of money to support the supply. Europe already created the Hydrogen Bank, and it's also putting a lot of money into the Innovation Fund, but let's see if it's enough to support the investments in hydrogen. But there are also other bottlenecks that need to be addressed. I would say that we have a lot of technology problems, a lot of the challenges that the developers face today are related with the suppliers. So we have another issue related with this one because a lot of these projects are benefiting from funding. So we need some flexibility on the funding side also to develop these projects, because the projects are being delayed not because the developers want to delay them, but because we are having issues on the implementation side.
I have an idea on that.
Okay. I would like to hear that. And I would like to highlight one other topic that is very sensitive for Portugal and for the refining sector in Portugal. And as you all know, Galp is making this change from grey to green in our Sines refinery. So maybe it may seem a little strange to talk about this topic. CBAM, it's not used to be talked of in these forums, but it is very important. With the recent revision of the Emission Trading System Directive, until 2040, there will be an aggressive allowance reduction from the market. So the CO2 costs will increase a lot, and this will put a lot of pressure in the industry and can result in a carbon leakage because it's less expensive to import these projects from other parts of the world than to produce them within the European perimeter. And for that reason, CBAM was created to avoid carbon leakage, putting a price on CO2 incorporated in imported products. But I don't know if you are aware that refining products are not included in the scope of CBAM, which means that if refining products are not included in the CBAM scope in the next few years, it will be less expensive to import them from other countries. And this will mean that refineries in Europe will lose competitiveness and may close. And this could be the end of a great opportunity for Portugal to reindustrialize and to take advantage of one of the newest refining assets in Europe.
Thank you, Anna. Pedro?
Thank you very much. And piggybacking on the CBAM issue, well, it covers hydrogen and green hydrogen. So it's actually, from that perspective, producing in Europe is somehow protected by it and from international competition. So everybody has to obey by the same principles, which plays in favor of perhaps the highest cost that we might have because we are in Europe. On the other hand, I would like to highlight that when we compare the IRA and so on with the European framework in terms of subsidizing CAPEX and OPEX, or investment or operation, I would also like to signal this shift that was indeed the European Hydrogen Bank. an opportunity to go into where it is most impactful, the subsidy, because indeed producing at large scale green hydrogen, close to 70% of the cost is the electricity price. So it's the OPEX, it's the operational expenditure. And the European Hydrogen Bank allows you to tap into that part of the equation, which then allows you also to be competitive when you sell your green hydrogen to a potential off-taker. So I like the angle that was put forward by the Hydrogen Bank, but I also concur in the fact that it's peanuts. We're speaking about peanuts for Europe in terms of budget. What I like the most about the Hydrogen Bank is not the budget that it comes along on the first pilot auction, is the possibility that opens for any member state to chip in. So they have this auction as a service where any member state can take the same, actually the bidding process into account and put the budget straight away to those that are selected from that member state. So that I find it very, very interesting. And one thing that I think that the Hydrogen Bank has not yet addressed, which is in the international leg of the Hydrogen Bank, now coming back again with the foreigners competition, they haven't yet addressed the fact that some member states want to put money as well in the Hydrogen Bank to subsidize. Well, it's not the Innovation Fund that is going to subsidize the imported hydrogen, green hydrogen, of course. It will be the member states that will put money into those pockets for importing green hydrogen. What I would like to see, and that's something that maybe we can all try to push for, is that any member state that puts money into the international leg of the European Hydrogen Bank also puts the same level of money into European producing green hydrogen, even if it's in a different member state. So that's what I would like to see in order to increase the budget on the domestic leg. And maybe that is wishful thinking, but for me it's what makes sense for Europe to continue to produce.
I agree. Thank you. Nuno?
Well, I'm not talking any further about the hydrogen bank because my colleagues made a good contribution. I'm actually talking about cannibalization, and what I mean by that is it is estimated that by 2030, just for hydrogen alone, we need 700 gigawatts additionally in Europe alone for producing hydrogen. This is an opportunity, but it's also a huge challenge. And it's a huge challenge because this is on hydrogen alone. There are other sectors of the energy transition. The electrification of economy brings several other challenges. Electric mobility, the electrification of thermal behavior at customer sites, the inclusion of more renewables, obviously, to reach the 85 and 90% targets. And that needs a backbone. We need to take not only molecules at the end, but we need to take electrons from producers to the plants, to the consumers, to any point of use. And it seems to me there's probably not enough capacity in Europe, and I represent the technology, so I'm talking about my sector, to supply the backbone of the electricity grid. Even if everyone does a firm commitment, it is impossible that all the European manufacturers can withstand this demand alone. So it seems to me that yes, we want to preserve the European industry, but it may not be possible if we look to each sector alone. Obviously, there's an Industry Act, there's an Innovation Funds, there's actually 10 different policies which unfold for 55. We can just pick. I go back again to my first question, which is the time. Time is of the essence. So if we wait to have the commitment for all the FIDs for hydrogen, the long-term investment plans in transmission system operators and distribution system operators, we will wait and wait and wait, and we will not make it happen. This sounds pessimistic, which I'm not, I'm optimistic. So on the opportunity side, and picking the words of bringing back again the Portuguese industry, we have a very good matrix, we have a very prominent competence creation, talent creation, and we do have actually good industry to portray what we do in Portugal and actually expand. I say this confidently because the future can only be brighter than the present.
I think before asking what needs to be done, I think it's important to remind what has been done in the past 2 years. It's not that long ago that hydrogen is in the top of the agenda, and we did so much in so little time. And sometimes we need to look back and see what needs to be done. And one of the important things that needs to be done is to look at, for instance, the legal framework that we already built in Portugal, in other countries, and needs to innovate further. We need to look at the regulation. We still have some bottlenecks in terms of regulation. We still have some bottlenecks in terms of infrastructures. We need to invest further in infrastructures in order to have all of this environment built and at the service of consumers and companies. And in the end, one of the, and bringing back what Nuno said, and we talk with a lot of companies on our day-to-day, and most of them tell us that, one, it's a matter of having some initial support, not only in terms of CapEx. You need to reduce the gap between the production price and the price of the final user. So things like the European Hydrogen Bank and things like the Portuguese auction will help a lot in reducing this gap. And of course, in terms of the technology access, there's a lack of equipment in the market to respond to the demand. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for us, as Nuno said, like companies like FASEC and others that have an opportunity, but they need to have a better understanding of the market evolution in order to invest in this kind of the demand is there, we know, but there are still some bottlenecks that need to be resolved.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. So, the idea. If we look at the IPP's story since the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, we know that the majority of those financial structures were project finance. So if you look at a project finance structure and you want to leverage your equity as a developer, you're going to need leverages between 80-20, 25-75. So the issue here is what comfort can we give to lenders to ensure that we can minimize the cost of debt and extend the tenor of the loans. And we can actually look at this as having sovereign insurances for the lender's part, where developers take equity at full risk, and try to make sure that this brings the level of cost of debt down, increase the tenor, and makes the amount of debt that is available there insurable for their mandates to actually apply on this. And to me, if we look at the story of Renewable since the end of the 80s, this is basically what has been done with feed-in tariffs and all of that. So if the leverage risk from the lender's perspective, we will be able, in my opinion, to actually speed this up. So I'm allowing myself to answer also because this makes more fun. I'm always optimistic, always. Thank you, Johnny. No, I need it. My age doesn't allow me to see anymore. Now, question number 3, and I will start with Pedro. So, from the supply side point of view, what do you think are the most important competitive advantages of Portugal, of course, Iberian Peninsula, for the production of green hydrogen? Just the production. I'm not talking about storing, transmission, and distribution. Just the production.
Okay, so you just solved my question. I mean, we have great sun and wind conditions to as a resource to produce green hydrogen at a competitive price in Portugal. I was actually going into storage and transmission.
Then go ahead. We can improvise.
Okay.
Please.
Because I also realized that by developing projects in Portugal, that both the TSO and the DSOs in the gas markets, they are very, very willing to do the shift as well and repurpose their assets. And we also have salt caverns that can be repurposed accordingly. So I really see a great opportunity for Portugal in terms of bringing and adding value locally. And with that said, I mean, the supply, we also try to look at the full value chain. So whenever we come with the supply, we also try to link it with the offtake somehow. And we also see a great opportunity for Portugal to develop greenfield, green industrial projects. So greenfield meaning starting from scratch, and green industrial projects because they will be leveraged either by direct electrification or indirect electrification via hydrogen.
Thank you, Pedro. Nuno?
What do we have best in Portugal? We have Portuguese. Obviously talented engineer, economists, lawyers, and I'm not joking, I really mean it. The talent creation in Portugal is ravishing, and we should make good use of it. The energy mix in Portugal, it's a very good example of a country which has, yes, in the 90s started this path. Well done. There's a long way to go still, but we had a head start. Cost of renewable generation is, as Pedro just said, quite low, especially in PV. 3 years ago, we were the lowest worldwide, I think, tariff for the auction in photovoltaics. We do have on the energy mix, we do have a little bit of biomass, and this comes in handy when talking about hydrogen. I'm actually combining now these three, my two last points actually, because having biomass, it's a very good way not to have to think about transporting hydrogen for too long distances. Biomass creates biogenic CO2. Mixing biogenic CO2 with green hydrogen makes it carbon negative. And allows us to exploit the green ammonia and renewable methanol landscape, which then it's easy to transport. And we do have infrastructure. We have seaports, we have one, which is very well equipped, and we have others which should be equipped easily to be able to transport green ammonia and renewable methanol. And my bet would be exactly on these sectors, decarbonizing heavy transportation, maritime transportation, or even going into the SAF fuels, definitely could be a very specific sector where Portuguese would have a clear advantage. And our eagerness, we're very much eager to do that. So let's put our hands to work.
Thank you, Nuno.
Just to add to what Nuno and Pedro said, regulatory stability, I think it's something that Portugal has that not many other countries have. And when rules and the legal framework changes in Portugal, normally it changes in an aspect of innovation and to open the market to new players, and also to simplify the life to people and promoters. That's what is happening in the past 4 to 5 years in terms of the legal framework. And one other important aspect that we have is that sometimes we have people that do not afraid to take risks and to move ahead, and that's important for this kind of markets.
Thank you, Jerónimo. Anna, please.
So there's nothing left for me. There is, I know. I think in a supply perspective, there's a lot of things that have already been said. We have abundant natural resources, water, sun, wind. We have talented people. We have regulation. And from the policy and regulation perspective, Portugal's government has shown support, strong support for the green economy transition, putting green hydrogen in the center of the National Energy and Climate Plan. And this level of commitment provides assurances and incentives for those who want to invest. But it is also important to remember that we cannot fully catch these advantages without grid connection and grid developments. Access to grid is a key issue in Portugal, and we welcome the procedure that was recently released by the Portuguese government to address the issue for the Singe high demand area, but we need more. And it is urgent also to have new capacity for injection.
Thank you. Because I agree with the four of you, I have nothing to say. So my next point goes to cover something that the four of you already covered, but I'd like to go into a deeper detail. So the approval of the Delegated Act to establish European regulation for the production of green hydrogen was expected for a long time, and they were finally approved. An auction will be held this year, as you know, by 800 million grant to support the European Hydrogen Bank to be allocated to projects. Keeping this in mind, what is missing to ramp up green hydrogen according to the current ambitions and green hydrogen production? And when can we expect to start seeing the production of green hydrogen at a very large scale? Nuno, I'm starting with you now.
Well, I'll be short because
Please don't, because we have 20 minutes, okay?
I'll save myself for the last question. And
Okay.
literally, this is clearly on the demand side. Creating demand is of the essence. Yes. We are used to PPAs. We should be getting used to HPAs. Definitely. Again, I'm not talking only about hydrogen. We should have a very stable demand for its derivatives. And here I think we lack the commitment from companies to actually use hydrogen, green ammonia, renewable methanol. There's a few good examples. Maersk, the Norwegian logistics operator, just finished ordering 100 new transports, new ships, all based on e-methanol as a requirement, as a minimum specification. So that's a very good example. We need more people more companies to be adventurous on this landscape. Obviously, the Hydrogen Bank will probably help a little bit on this. It will not solve the commitment problem. So more than talking about it, we really need to firmly believe it. And we talked about the positive sides. Now we're talking about Hydrogen Bank and how to create demand for the supply we just approach positively. And there's still a few steps on the formalities to materialize a project. All the permitting is still taking a little bit of time. There are several stakeholders to be included on this permitting process. They need to be included. We just need to understand how to alleviate this. And in the permit, I actually am very much focused on what Anna said on the connection point. I believe the gas infrastructure is a little bit better prepared for our objectives. We cannot say the same for the electric grid or for the interconnections. I was just speaking to a colleague from Morocco, from the operator, who was vividly happy for the MOU signed yesterday on the interconnection, subsea interconnection, which is a good example of what I think it will actually impact positively all the renewables that we need to deploy to supply hydrogen, and not only. So definitely.
I think in the end of the day, it takes time. These things take time. As I mentioned before, it was only 2 years ago that we started to speak about hydrogen in Portugal, in Europe overall. And in those 2 years, Portugal had the opportunity to welcome a lot of small to medium to large scale projects. And some of them are already on the ground with their studies done, with the investment insured. And in the end, this will take time. We need to give time for things to happen and for the rules and the incentives that will need to come up in due time. In case of Portugal, in terms of licensing of these projects, a lot has been done. I don't see that more has to be done. I think some clarity, some innovation in rules will help. But as I mentioned, it will take time. We need to give time for projects to mature. We went through a COVID. We are going through a war that had its impacts on supply chains. So we will need to give 1 or 2 years for this to normalize and for projects to have more security about the future.
Thank you very much, Adonim. Anna?
Well, it is undeniable that the auction from the European Hydrogen Bank represents a positive step towards supporting green hydrogen projects. However, there are still challenges that need to be addressed. Although European regulation establishes mandates stimulating the supply side of the green hydrogen market, it is important to recognize that the current challenges lie on the demand side of the equation. So, as we already said previously, we need to boost demand, we need to invest in infrastructure, we need to foster innovation, we need to ensure that our ongoing policy support to accelerate the timeline for large-scale green hydrogen production. But I would also like to highlight that there are a lot of projects already that were announced, and companies like Galp, for instance, that already has a refinery that uses hydrogen, is already making some big steps towards the green hydrogen. So we already announced the 100 megawatt project. The final investment decision was taken. It's a 600 million euro project for the first phase, and we'll have to scale up until the 600 megawatt to convert all the gray hydrogen that we use into green hydrogen. So it's a very big investment. Companies need stability, need the proper regulation, but I think that everything is looking good for us to be able to invest in the future if things continue to go like this.
Thank you, Anna. Pedro?
Thank you very much. Also building on what Anna just said, for me, or for us, the delegated acts actually provide a lot of legal certainty. But Europe tends to do it, the legal framework is always very, very complex, and there's always some catch. And the catch here could be that the myriad of additional rules and laws that come with it, like the EU Refuel Aviation, the EU Refuel Maritime, the road transportation mandates and so on, they create specific market segments where the stick is higher, which means that the willingness to pay for the green hydrogen is also higher. So there are other sectors that perhaps in Portugal have more impact in terms of value added, in terms of the GDP, and this is my economic economics background kicking in, that would deserve to be somehow covered by the rules as well. And I'm now thinking about the ceramics, I'm thinking about the glass industry, that the only incentive that they have is the cost of the CO2, which is not enough to bridge, to really factor in the advantages of green hydrogen. So what I would say is that, and trying to link it to the European Hydrogen Bank, perhaps what this pilot will, and this is a pilot, this pilot auction will conclude with, and I hope they go in that direction, is that the willingness to pay in different sectors, especially those that are not captive, like refineries, there's already a market there. The others, they don't have a market. They are really, it's a new market that is booming, or should be booming. That's the point. So will it boom or not? And what I would say is that those that have less willingness to pay, or less sticks and carrots to go along, they would need specific pockets within the European Hydrogen Bank auctions, so that they don't fail in terms of tapping the market, in terms of accepting green hydrogen as a solution to green their industrial segment. And this is key for Portugal and Spain, I would say. So that's why I would really, I encourage everybody to go along for the first auction, but having in mind that the rules might change for the second and the third, and hopefully they will change, because that's a key element to make it work.
Thank you, Pedro. So we are going for our last question, which is good. Sorry? No, not on this one, because at the end of the day, we need to follow the path that was followed by renewables, and it's the same recipe, it's just different context. But so going to our last question, and I will start with Jerónimo. As we actually watched recently, according to the study carried out by the consultant Aurora, green hydrogen needs to reach a price of 2.5 euros per kilogram at current prices to be competitive with blue hydrogen in Europe. What is the trend of current prices of green hydrogen production, and what needs to be done to reach the 2.5 euros per kilogram? Taking also into account that in Iberia, it may be necessary to export green hydrogen to the remaining of Europe, what type of relative costs need to be added to the production costs? You have it already.
Tricky question for the licensing authority that doesn't work with prices. I think in terms of the output price of hydrogen to be competitive, as I mentioned, this is a long travel between what we started 2 years ago and what we'll have in the next couple of years in terms of hydrogen. For Portugal, this is a real opportunity, not only to the decarbonization of our industries, but also an opportunity to create new sectors in Portugal. What we are seeing, for instance, in Sines is the burning of new industries like methanol, like e-SAFs and other synthetic fuels that will place Portugal among those that will be the first ones to deliver these products to the markets. And that's also comes with a challenge, and we need to ensure that we have enough competitive electricity in the system to ensure that the prices for hydrogen are competitive. And this leads us to the discussion of renewables and grids, and that's the challenge that we need also to face in the next years, is to ensure that we have a sufficient part in terms of electricity in the system to make sure that these projects are viable economically. And for instance, one of the main challenges of the projects in Sines is to get the connection to the grid in order to have the electricity in the amount they need to ensure that prices are competitive. So this is almost the chicken and egg. We have to have the electricity first, or the projects, but we need to move with both at the same time. And I would say that the mechanism that the government recently put out to ensure that projects have connection to the grid it's a good sign that projects have a real opportunity to see the light of the day and with competitive prices in the end.
Thank you, Jerónimo. Ana?
Well, I will not focus so much on the price side of the technology. I think that green and blue hydrogen both are important to lower our carbon emissions. But for us, it is pretty clear that the European Commission strategy has given preference to green hydrogen. So this aligns very well with our competitive advantage, with Portugal competitive advantages. We have a lot of water, sun, and wind, and we should use it to produce green hydrogen. And to produce blue hydrogen, we would need to import resources that we don't have, like natural gas with all the things that come with it, when compared with blue hydrogen. So for us, it's pretty obvious that green hydrogen should be our preference.
Thank you, Ana. Pedro?
Yeah, I mentioned before the cost of green hydrogen is basically the green electron. So the thing is, indeed, we're in Portugal. We're already reaping the positive impact of early investment into renewables, which at some point was a burden. Now it's becoming an advantage to Portugal. We see the prices going down. We also see the prices not only when the sun is shining, but also when we just saw it the last couple of months. The price in Portugal just dropped significantly in terms of the electricity, hands in hands with Spain. So very, very good for energy-intensive industries like the green electricity, the green hydrogen production. And there's a dynamic. It should continue in this direction. So the point is, how can you incentivize the investment in new renewables when the margin is shrinking more and more, and it will keep on shrinking? So I guess the incentives should shift again. So at some point we had the feed-in tariffs and so on. Now the market is, and then we move to the market. Now we are coming at a point where the capex reduction costs of the renewables is not enough to justify the low cost of the electricity. So there should be a different mechanism that allows the investor to be subsidized somehow, which then in turn allows the green hydrogen to go down as well. So I have no magic solution. It's just that the electrons have to be cheaper, but for them to be cheaper, there must be some kind of compensation for the investors that keep on building. And we are still short of the target to reach 90% of renewables in the grid, so in the power grid. So there's still a lot of challenges ahead. There are new technologies that are more costly, like others that were before they matured, like the offshore wind. They have to be subsidized so that we have the supply of electrons that allows electrons to go until the price required to meet the 2.5 euros or dollars per kilogram. I remember Aurora was mentioning dollars. So yeah, that would be my take. Renewables have to find a support scheme that allows the price to drop accordingly.
Thank you, Pedro. Nuno, now you have the time to go through the detail of the answer.
Are you sure? I'm seeing cocktails over there, so...
I know, but if you go for 3-4 minutes, I think it should be enough.
Good. Thanks for the flexibility. And let's talk about flexibility then. You said 2.5 euros per kilogram. And that's, well, I'm not checking with Aurora, I'm checking with another source, the IBNEF, which portrays the cost of green hydrogen between 2.5 and 1 in 2030, depending on how it is produced. Technology should not be a problem, Anna. Should definitely not be a problem, because it's available. It's a matter of applying it and growing with it. But the comparison also benchmarks against the cost of natural gas. That's what we're talking about, against green against blue. So then again, if we do get to make things and materialize things, I think we're going to get a positive surprise as the time passes by. And time is something that Geronimo used at least in 2 of his answers. And I think it's good to use time because the time constant allows us to explore different segments differently. Let me explore a little bit on that. Half of the current hydrogen applications are from refineries. Half of it. More than a third after that, it's ammonia. And after that, you have a fourth of methanol, energy, and eventually 1% in transportation alone. If we go from top to bottom, actually from bottom to top, I think we do have a huge opportunity to start greenifying the hydrogen use on these sectors where hydrogen is less used faster. So it's a time of it's an essence of time. If we do manage to produce hydrogen and derivatives, which can actually compare easily with the current cost of the competing fuels, then we do have an opportunity there to decarbonize, again, heavy transportation like maritime, aviation, starting on aviation. A few industries that use a lot of ammonia, for example, fertilizing. These are easy to reach sectors which can start easily and way before they can be pioneers with a cost comparison which is not brutal on the business case. And then eventually we'll end up on the sectors where this competition is done more purely blue against green and not any derivative. And by then I think we may have a parity on the cost, and we may have the business case by 2030. So I'm again trying to terminate here, to conclude with a very positive message that let's not wait and see, let's do it, because we'll see very positive outcomes.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to allow myself again. If we de-risk, it's obviously that the package of treating water, power supply, and electrolyzers will reduce their total cost of projects, which will impact levelized cost of hydrogen. Blue hydrogen, or gray plus carbon capture and sequestration, are at the top of the technology. Green hydrogen, the electrolyzers, in my opinion, will follow the path in terms of levelized cost of hydrogen as solar and wind did. So we have a lot of gains here. And we also have a lot of gains in operating electrolyzers and making sure that their efficiency continues. And we need to bring electrolyzers from an engineering project to manufacturing, like the car industry. And so that will bring the cost down again. And if we de-risk for the green hydrogen projects, again, project finance structures with that, I think even if we don't achieve the 2.5, what matters to me is the comparison between how cheap blue is going to get and how green can actually overtake and speed up. And I think with those 4 things and what you have mentioned, I think we can be easily there by 2030. So we end our time. I want to thank all of you for attending our panel today. Thank you very much. A round of applause. And we close here. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for the audience also to be here. Thank you very much.